Billionaire gave 1 million to each woman to spend, but the cleaner bought what no one expected. Richard Thompson watched the 5 women gathered in the living room of his mansion in Beverly Hills, New York. His 3 daughters and daughter-in-law waited anxiously as he held 5 white envelopes, each containing a check for $1 million. That's when he extended one of the envelopes to Dorothy, the 55-year-old cleaner who had worked in the house for 2 decades. "For you too, Mrs. Dorothy," said Richard, ignoring his daughter's astonished looks. Ashley, the eldest daughter at 28, nearly choked on her coffee. "Dad, are you sure?" she asked, trying to maintain her composure. "I have 1 week to spend this money, is that right?" questioned Dorothy, her hands trembling as she held the envelope. "Exactly. 1 week for each of you." "I want to see how you'll use this amount," replied Richard, with an enigmatic smile. Jessica, the 26-year-old middle daughter, exchanged glances with her younger sister Madison, aged 24. Meanwhile, Jennifer, the 30-year-old daughter-in-law married to Richard's eldest son, seemed to be mentally calculating her next purchases. "But Dad, why include the—" began Madison, but was interrupted by the patriarch's stern look. "Dorothy has been part of this family longer than some people here present," said Richard, giving a meaningful look toward Jennifer. The cleaner remained silent, observing the reactions around her. Her calloused hands contrasted with the perfect nails of her employers. The black uniform with white apron she wore was simple compared to the designer dresses the other women displayed. "Is there any specific rule, Mr. Richard?" asked Dorothy in a quiet voice. "Just one. You must spend all the money in exactly 1 week. Not more, not less. On the 8th day, I want proof of all expenses." Ashley was already mentally making a list of jewelry she had wanted to buy for months. The Crystal Crown jeweler's store at Prestige Mall would be her first stop. Jessica thought about finally getting that plastic surgery she had always wanted, maybe even 2 procedures at once. Madison dreamed of an imported car, something that would turn heads at college parties. Jennifer, meanwhile, had more elaborate plans. A yacht would be perfect to impress her friends at the Hampton Yacht Club. As for Dorothy, she remained quiet, absorbing the reality that she had more money in her hands than she had earned in her entire lifetime. "May I go now, Mr. Richard? I need to finish cleaning the library," said Dorothy, putting the envelope in her apron pocket. "Of course, Mrs. Dorothy. Actually, as of today, you're excused from working for a week. Enjoy using your money." The daughters exchanged glances. It was the first time they had seen the cleaner released from her duties. Normally, she didn't even rest completely on holidays. As soon as Dorothy left the room, the 4 younger women began whispering among themselves. "Dad's crazy for including the maid," whispered Ashley. "She probably doesn't even know how to spend that much money," added Jessica. "I bet she'll buy televisions for her whole family and still have $500,000 left," laughed Madison. Jennifer, always the smartest of the group, remained thoughtful. "Don't you think it's strange? Your father never does anything without a reason. Why exactly 1 week? Why include Dorothy?" "You're overthinking it, sister-in-law. It's just a rich man's whim," said Ashley, waving her hand. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The next morning, Ashley was the first to leave the house. She drove her European luxury vehicle convertible to the most luxurious mall in the area. Accompanied by 2 friends she was determined to impress. Her first stop was at the most expensive jewelry store in the mall. "I want to see that diamond necklace in the display window," she requested, pointing to a piece that cost $200,000. The salesperson, accustomed to demanding clients, treated her with the deference reserved for millionaires. "Excellent choice, ma'am. This piece is one of a kind, made with top-quality South African diamonds." While trying on the necklace, Ashley photographed everything to post on social media. She wanted everyone to know she had money to spend. She bought not only the necklace but also bracelets, earrings and rings, totaling nearly $400,000. "I still need a new car," she commented to her friends as they walked through the mall. At the luxury car dealership, she chose a red European sports car that cost $300,000. The salesman was impressed when she paid in cash, without even taking a proper test drive. Meanwhile, Jessica was at a renowned plastic surgery clinic, in the Upper East Side. She had scheduled appointments with 3 different surgeons to get all the procedures she had always wanted. "Doctor, I want liposuction, a nose job, breast augmentation, and Botox. How much would all that be?" she asked, seated in the leather chair of the luxurious consultation room. "These are procedures that require recovery time, dear. I don't recommend doing everything at once," explained the doctor, a middle-aged woman with an impeccable appearance. "Doctor, I have a deadline. It needs to be this week." The surgeon hesitated, but when Jessica showed she could pay $250,000 in cash, she finally agreed to perform the main procedures. They scheduled everything for the next day. Madison had a different approach. She gathered her college friends and organized a party that would be remembered for years. She rented a mansion in Aspen for $50,000 for the weekend, hired famous DJs, premium beverage suppliers, and even fireworks. "It's going to be epic," she told her friends while finalizing the contracts. "I spent $300,000 just on the party, but I still have plenty of money left." She bought designer clothes for herself and all her friends, imported shoes, and even hired a professional photographer to document everything. She wanted the party to become a legend at the university. Jennifer, always calculating, had a more elaborate strategy. First, she went to a luxury real estate agency in downtown New York. "I'm looking for an apartment for investment, something between $800,000 and $1 million, she told the broker, an elegant middle-aged man. "We have some interesting options in Williamsburg, new apartments with good appreciation." She chose a 2-bedroom apartment for $900,000. In her mind, it was an investment that would pay for itself through rent. With the remaining $100,000, she bought designer handbags and some jewelry to wear at social events. Dorothy, on the other hand, simply disappeared. No one saw her leaving the house on Monday morning, and throughout the entire first day, she gave no news. The other women began to speculate. "Do you think she ran off with the money?" asked Ashley during dinner. "Where would a cleaning lady run off to with $1 million?" questioned Jessica, her face swollen from the procedures she had undergone. "Maybe she went back to her hometown in Kentucky," suggested Madison. Richard listened to the speculations in silence with a discreet smile. When they asked where Dorothy was, he simply said she had asked for a few days off. On the second day, Ashley posted dozens of photos of her new acquisitions. The red European sports car gleamed in the garage next to the family's other vehicles. The jewelry was displayed in every selfie she took. Jessica was still recovering from the surgeries but was already planning how to spend the rest of the money. She thought about luxury furniture to redecorate her room, or perhaps a trip to Miami. Madison's party in Aspen was an absolute success. Over 200 people attended, and she felt like a princess seeing everyone praise her generosity. She spent another $50,000 just on extra drinks and personalized souvenirs for the guests. Jennifer visited some art galleries, thinking about buying paintings that would appreciate over time. She was determined to use the money wisely, unlike her sisters-in-law, whom she considered impulsive spenders. There was still no sign of Dorothy. On the third day, one of the housekeepers, Maria, mentioned seeing Dorothy on the bus passing through Williamsburg. She was dressed as always in those simple clothes. She was carrying a leather briefcase in her hands, Maria told her employers. "How strange." "What would she be doing in Williamsburg?" asked Ashley. "Maybe she's looking for a house to buy for her family," suggested Jessica. Madison laughed at her sister's suggestion. "With $1 million, she could at most buy a small apartment on the outskirts. She doesn't even have enough money for Williamsburg." The 3 sisters decided to spend even more to compensate for what they considered the cleaning lady's lack of ambition. Ashley bought 3 more designer bags and a Swiss watch. Jessica hired a famous personal trainer and a renowned nutritionist to take care of her body after the surgeries. Madison organized a second party, this time in New York, spending another $200,000. Jennifer, more cautious, invested the last $100,000 in stocks of companies she considered promising. She wanted to prove she knew how to use the money better than her sisters-in-law. On the 4th day, Richard received an unexpected call at his office. "Mr. Thompson, this is the second notary office. Mrs. Dorothy Wilson is here making some property transfers. She asked us to confirm her identity using you as a reference." Richard confirmed Dorothy's details and hung up the phone with an even broader smile. His daughters were upstairs discussing the week's expenses, unaware of what was really happening. "Dad is hiding something," Jennifer told her sisters-in-law. "That smile of his isn't normal." "You're being paranoid," replied Ashley. "He's happy because we're spending his money." "I still think we should have prevented Dorothy from participating," murmured Madison. "She doesn't even know the real value of money." Jessica, still with her face bandaged, agreed with her younger sister. "A person who earns $2,000 a month doesn't have the ability to handle $1 million. She'll probably be cheated by someone." That night, Richard dined alone, as his daughters had social commitments to show off their new acquisitions. He thought about how each one was reacting to the challenge, especially Dorothy, whom he had known for so many years. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot, as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. The fifth day brought unexpected news. Ashley woke up early to get the last item on her shopping list, a painting by a famous American artist that cost $150,000. When she arrived at the gallery, she discovered that someone had bought the piece the day before. "What a shame, Ma'am. A very nice buyer took this canvas yesterday. She paid in cash and didn't even haggle," explained the gallery owner. Ashley was irritated but soon found another similar painting. She was determined to spend every last cent of her million. Jessica, finally recovered from the surgeries, decided to have a professional photo session to document her transformation. She hired a renowned photographer and spent $30,000 in a single afternoon of work. Madison was euphoric about the success of her parties. College friends treated her like a celebrity, and she enjoyed every moment of fame. She decided to spend the last $200,000 on expensive gifts for the people closest to her, wanting to maintain her image of generosity. Jennifer discovered that one of her stocks had depreciated 20% in just 2 days. She began to get nervous, realizing that maybe she wasn't as good with investments as she thought. And Dorothy was still missing. On the 6th day, Maria brought more information about the cleaner's mysterious movements. "I saw her leaving a law office this morning. She had a briefcase full of papers and looked very serious," reported the maid. "A law office?" repeated Jennifer, intrigued. "Why would she need a lawyer?" "Maybe she's buying something very expensive and needs legal help," suggested Jessica. Ashley shook her head, skeptical. "Or someone is taking advantage of her. Simple people are easy targets for scammers." The three sisters began to genuinely worry. Although they treated Dorothy only as an employee, they had some affection for her. The idea that she might be being deceived bothered them. "We should tell Dad," said Madison. "He already knows, I'm sure," replied Jennifer. "The question is why he isn't doing anything." That afternoon, Richard received another call, this time from an acquaintance in the real estate field. "Richard, what a surprise. Your employee Dorothy just closed a deal here with us. She bought 3 properties at once, paid everything in cash. A woman of vision, huh?" Richard thanked him for the information and hung up, increasingly satisfied. His daughters were at the mall making their last spends of the week, while Dorothy was executing a plan that none of them imagined. Ashley had exhausted her shopping ideas and decided to hire a famous decorator to redecorate her closet. She spent the last $50,000 on a renovation that would last only 3 days. Jessica invested the remaining money in very expensive aesthetic treatments, gold massages, stem cell facials, and even genetic therapies for her hair. Madison, seeing that it was the penultimate day, panicked and began to buy everything she saw in front of her: shoes, bags, perfumes, electronics. Her room looked like a department store. Jennifer tried to recover her losses by investing in more stocks, but only worsened her situation. She was beginning to realize that maybe she wasn't as smart as she imagined. On the 7th and last day, all the women made a final run to exhaust their millions. The mood in the house was one of euphoria and nervousness. They knew that Richard would do some kind of evaluation of how they had used the money. Ashley used the last $10,000 on imported beauty products. Jessica paid a pending bill from a spa she frequented. Madison literally gave money to friends to buy whatever they wanted, just so nothing would be left. Jennifer, desperate, invested the last $20,000 in a dubious startup that promised quick returns. and Dorothy finally appeared. She arrived home in the late afternoon, carrying the same leather briefcase that Maria had mentioned. She wore her usual simple clothes and looked tired, but there was something different in her gaze. "Good afternoon, Mr. Richard," she greeted, as she had done for 20 years. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Dorothy. How was your week?" "Productive, sir, very productive." The four younger women ran down the stairs when they learned that Dorothy had returned. "Where were you?" asked Ashley. "We were worried," lied Jessica. "Did you manage to spend everything?" questioned Madison with a mocking tone. Dorothy looked at each of them calmly. "Yes, I did. I spent every last penny." "And what did you buy?" insisted Jennifer. "Tomorrow you will find out," replied Dorothy, going up to her small room at the back of the house. That night, none of the women managed to sleep well. Richard had scheduled a meeting for the following morning, where each was to present their expenses. The tension was palpable. Ashley mentally reviewed her purchases: jewelry, car, decor, beauty products. It added up to exactly $1 million. Jessica thought about the surgeries, treatments, and photo session. She had also reached the exact amount. Madison remembered the extravagant parties and expensive gifts for her friends. Jennifer calculated her investments, knowing she had lost money. They all wondered what on earth Dorothy had bought. On the morning of the 8th day, the 5 women gathered in the living room. Richard was seated in his leather armchair, with a serene yet penetrating expression. A table had been placed in the center of the room so each could present their receipts. "Let's start with you, Ashley," said Richard. The eldest daughter spread across the table invoices for jewelry, car documents, receipts for aesthetic treatments, and various purchases. "I spent exactly $1 million, Dad. I invested in valuable items that will stay with me for years," she explained proudly. Richard examined the papers without comment. "Jessica, your turn." The middle daughter presented medical receipts, proof of treatments, and the invoice for the photo session. "I invested in myself, Dad. Beauty is an investment that always pays off," she justified. Madison, the youngest, showed party contracts, gift receipts, and impulsive purchases. "I wanted to share my joy with friends. Money is meant to create happy memories," she said, trying to sound philosophical. Jennifer, the daughter-in-law, presented apartment documents, stock statements, and some smaller purchases. "I was the only one who thought about real investments, father-in-law. My money is working to yield more," she stated confidently. Richard analyzed all the documents in silence. The mood in the room was tense. Finally, he turned to Dorothy. "And you, Mrs. Dorothy?" The cleaning lady opened her leather folder and began to neatly take out papers. First, she placed 3 property deeds on the table. "I bought the building where I grew up in Williamsburg, which had been abandoned for 10 years. I paid $300,000, she explained in a firm voice. The 4 women exchanged glances, confused. Williamsburg was a valued area, but an abandoned building seemed like a terrible investment. Dorothy continued, taking out more documents. "I also bought 2 houses on the outskirts of the South Side that were in terrible condition. $200,000 each. "Dorothy, you were tricked," interrupted Ashley. "Abandoned properties are worthless." The cleaning lady smiled for the first time in the meeting. "I'm not finished yet, Mrs. Ashley." She pulled out another set of papers: detailed architectural plans, contracts with construction companies, and renovation budgets. With the remaining $300,000, I hired the best architects and engineers in the city. We will transform the abandoned building into 20 small apartments for low-income families. The 2 houses will become 16 studio apartments for young workers. Silence fell over the room. The mocking expressions on the other women's faces began to turn to surprise. "But Dorothy," said Jessica, "that's not an investment, it's charity." "I'm not finished yet," repeated the cleaning lady, now with more firmness in her voice. She showed more documents: social rental contracts, partnerships with local businesses, and even a detailed business plan. Each apartment will be rented for $400, less than half the market price. The studios for $250. In 5 years, I will recover the entire investment. In 10 years, I will have enough profit to expand the project. Jennifer, who considered herself the family's investment expert, was speechless. "But How did you know how to do all these calculations? Dorothy looked directly at Richard before answering. I worked in this house for 20 years. I've heard thousands of business conversations. I witnessed hundreds of meetings in Mr. Richard's office. I absorbed so much knowledge over these years. Richard nodded approvingly but still hadn't said a word. There's more, Dorothy continued. But first I need to tell a story. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us just starting out. Now, continuing. Dorothy stood up and walked to the window overlooking the garden. 25 years ago, I was a 30-year-old woman who had just arrived from rural Kentucky. I had only the clothes on my back and $50 in my pocket. My dream was to work in the big city and send money to my family back home. The four women listened in silence, for the first time genuinely paying attention to the employee's words. One night, I was sleeping at the door of a church in downtown New York when a young businessman passed by. He also seemed to be going through hard times, with wrinkled clothes and a lost look. He asked if I had anything to eat. Richard closed his eyes, remembering that night. I shared my only piece of bread and a bottle of water with him. We talked until dawn about dreams and hopes. He told me that one day he would be successful and repay my kindness. I laughed and said I expected nothing in return. Ashley looked at her dad, beginning to understand where the story was heading. The next day, that young man offered me a job as a cleaner in the small company he was setting up. It was Mr. Richard. The revelation hit the room like a bomb. The daughters had never heard this version of the story about how their father met Dorothy. During these 20 years, I've watched this family grow and prosper. I saw you being born, grow up, graduate, continued Dorothy, looking at each of the daughters. But I also saw many things that saddened me. What do you mean? Asked Madison defensively. I saw how you treat people you consider inferior. I saw the contempt in your eyes when you meet someone simpler. I saw the lack of empathy for those who have less. Dorothy's words were spoken kindly but cut deep. Jennifer lowered her head, remembering how she had always treated the cleaner with arrogance. That's why, when Mr. Richard gave me this money, I knew exactly what to do, Dorothy continued. It wasn't just about spending $1 million. It was about showing what kind of people we are when we have resources. Richard finally spoke up. Do you want to know why I included Mrs. Dorothy in the challenge? The four women nodded, anxious. Because in 5 years I'll be retiring. I need to choose who will take on the responsibility of managing not only my business, but also my social legacy. I wanted to see how each of you would handle abundant resources. The bomb had been detonated. The daughters looked at each other, realizing that what seemed like a game was actually a decisive test for the family's future. You spent on yourselves, continued Richard. Jewelry, surgeries, parties, apartments for personal appreciation. Dorothy spent on other people. Jessica tried to defend herself. Dad, but we didn't know it was a test. Real life doesn't come with warnings either, Richard replied firmly. Opportunities appear and reveal our true character. Dorothy returned to the table and took the last documents from her folder. I haven't finished telling how I spent the money. She showed receipts from different institutions, schools, hospitals, nursing homes, and community centers. Besides the properties, I also paid off debts for families I've met throughout my life. Mrs. Margaret, who works at the neighborhood bakery, was about to lose her home because of her husband's medical debts. $15,000. She continued, pulling out more receipts. The son of Bernadette, who works as a cleaner in another building, needed money to finish college. $10,000. The granddaughter of Mr. Walter, who sells flowers at the traffic light, was born with a heart condition. Private surgery, $25,000. With each name mentioned, the expressions of the other women grew more serious. Dorothy knew real stories of people they didn't even know existed. I created an emergency fund for situations like these. When someone in the community goes through extreme difficulties, there will be resources available to help. Richard stood up and went to Dorothy, placing his hand on her shoulder. Mrs. Dorothy, you used $1 million to transform the lives of dozens of families and still created an investment that will sustain itself for years to come. But Dad, protested Jennifer, my apartment was also an investment. Your apartment will only generate rent for you, replied Richard. Dorothy's project will provide decent housing for entire families and still yield financial returns to expand the program. Ashley was beginning to understand the scale of what had happened. Are you saying that Dorothy won the test? It wasn't a test with winners and losers, explained Richard. It was an opportunity to show values, and you showed exactly who you are. The atmosphere in the room was heavy. The four younger women realized how petty and superficial they had been in their choices. Madison broke the silence. And now, Dad, what will happen to us? Richard returned to his armchair and took a deep breath before answering. Now you will learn from Mrs. Dorothy. She will be the new social director of all my companies. You will work under her supervision, understanding how to use resources to generate real positive impact. Work for the former cleaner? Questioned Jennifer, outraged. Work with a woman who understands the true value of money, corrected Richard firmly. Dorothy intervened gently. I don't want you to work for me. I want us to work together. You have formal education, contacts, resources that I don't have. I have life experience and knowledge of real needs. Combined, we can do much more. Jessica, who had remained quiet, finally spoke. Dorothy, we always treated you as an employee. Why do you want to help us? Because you are the daughters of the man who changed my life. Because I believe people can change when they understand the impact of their actions. And because I know that deep down you have good hearts. You just lost your way. Her words were sincere and touched the hearts of the four women deeply. For the first time, they saw Dorothy not as the cleaner, but as a wise woman who had dedicated 20 years of her life to caring for that family. Richard continued explaining the new arrangements. Starting Monday, you will begin working on the company's new social project. Dorothy will be the general coordinator. Ashley will be responsible for partnerships with luxury suppliers who want to make donations. Jessica will handle contacts with medical clinics for free care. Madison will organize charity events to raise funds, and Jennifer will manage the project's financial investments. The four exchanged glances, realizing that their father had thought about how to use each one's skills and contacts constructively. And if we don't want to participate, asked Ashley. Then you will lose your right to the inheritance, replied Richard without hesitation. My estate will go entirely to social projects coordinated by Mrs. Dorothy. The statement was a shock. The daughters had never imagined their father would be so strict about family values. Jennifer tried to negotiate. Father-in-law, that's not fair. We are your daughters. And that's exactly why I expect more from you, replied Richard. You've had every opportunity in the world to develop empathy and social responsibility. Now you have a new chance. Dorothy addressed the four women with a maternal tone. Girls, I know this is hard to accept, but you'll discover that helping others brings a satisfaction that no jewel or car can give. How can you be so sure? Asked Madison, still resistant. Because I've spent my whole life doing it, Dorothy replied simply. Every time I saw you happy because the house was clean, every time I cared for you when you were sick, every time I listened to your problems without judgment, I received in return something far more valuable than money, the feeling of having been useful. Her words especially touched Jessica, who remembered how Dorothy had always cared for her as a child. Dorothy, do you remember when I broke my arm at 8 years old? Yes, I remember. I stayed awake for 3 nights caring for you because you had a fever. And when I finished high school and was nervous about the college entrance exams, I made chamomile tea every night, and we talked about your dreams of becoming a doctor. Jessica began to cry, realizing how ungrateful she had been to someone who had always shown genuine affection. Why did you never complain about how we treated you? Because I knew that one day you would grow up and understand. And that day has come, replied Dorothy, extending her hand to Jessica. One by one, the daughters began to understand the extent of the sacrifice and dedication Dorothy had shown over the years. She wasn't just the employee who cleaned the house, she was someone who had actively participated in raising them. Ashley was the first to give in. Dad, Dorothy, I accept working on the project, but I want to really learn, not just fulfill an obligation. I want to participate too, said Jessica, drying her tears. I have a medical degree and can use my knowledge to help people who really need it. Madison and Jennifer still hesitated, but seeing their sisters yield, they ended up agreeing too. Richard smiled for the first time during the entire meeting. Great. We start work on Monday. But first, I have one last surprise. He went to the room's safe and took out 5 more envelopes. Each of you used $1 million in a way that reflects your current values. Now I'm giving each of you $1 more million. I want to see if the experience changed anything. The 4 daughters were shocked. Dorothy also seemed surprised. But Dad, we already spent the first $1 million. Exactly. Now you have a second chance to show who you really are, explained Richard. And if we spend it the same as the first time? Asked Jennifer. Then I'll confirm that some people never change and the social projects will receive the entire family inheritance, he replied seriously. Dorothy, who had remained quiet, finally spoke. Mr. Richard, I don't need another $1 million. What I did with the first was just the beginning. Now I have a sustainable project that will develop on its own. Mrs. Dorothy, please accept it. Use it as you see fit, insisted Richard. Then I'll use it to accelerate the project. Instead of waiting 5 years to recover the investment, I can immediately expand to more families. The daughters watched the ease with which Dorothy handled amounts that to them represented objects of desire. You have 1 week, like last time, announced Richard. On the 8th day we'll meet again. This time, however, the atmosphere was completely different. The 4 younger women seemed thoughtful, reflecting on the lessons learned. That night, instead of going out to celebrate like the first time, they stayed home talking about what had happened. It was the first time in years they had a deep conversation about values and life purpose. I feel ashamed, confessed Ashley. I spent $1 million on frivolous things while Dorothy changed the lives of dozens of people. We should all be ashamed, Jessica agreed. She taught us a lesson in humanity. Madison, who had always been the most rebellious, surprised her sisters. You know what impressed me the most? How she knows the story of every person she helped. These weren't just random donations. She truly cares about people. Jennifer, who had always considered herself superior to her sisters-in-law due to her financial skills, admitted, "And I thought I was smart with investments." She created a social business model that will sustain itself for generations. It's brilliant. During the following week, the 4 women took completely different approaches. Instead of rushing to malls and luxury stores, they sought to better understand Dorothy's project. Ashley visited the construction site of the building in Williamsburg. She saw workers enthusiastically laboring to transform the abandoned location into decent homes. She spoke with some families who would benefit and heard stories that deeply moved her. Mrs. Ashley, said one of the future residents, a 40-year-old woman with 3 children, when Mrs. Dorothy said we would have a real home, I cried. We've lived in a single room in a boarding house for 5 years. Jessica went to the hospital where Dorothy had paid for the heart surgery of a child. She spoke with the doctors and understood how a $25,000 surgery had saved a life. Doctor, how many children could be saved if we had more resources? She asked the pediatric surgeon. Hundreds, doctor. We have a huge waiting list of cases needing surgery, but families can't afford to pay. Madison visited public schools on the outskirts and was shocked by the precarious teaching conditions. She, who had always studied at the best private schools, had never realized the educational reality of the United States. Teacher, what's most needed here? She asked an experienced educator. Everything, my dear. School supplies, computers, a decent library, sometimes even meals are lacking. But what's most missing is hope. The children grow up thinking they have no future. Jennifer learned more about credit unions and microfinance. She discovered a world of humble entrepreneurs who only needed an opportunity to prosper. Mr. Walter, how did a $5,000 loan change your life? She asked a small business owner. Miss, I sold sweets on the street for 15 years. With that $5,000, I managed to rent a small store. Today I employ 3 people and support my family with dignity. Each of them was having a transformative experience, understanding realities that had always been nearby, but that they had never seen. On the 5th day of the 2nd week, the 4 gathered to share what they had discovered. Girls, I can no longer look at my jewelry the same way, said Ashley. Every necklace I bought would cost a child's surgery. I cancelled all the upcoming plastic surgeries I had scheduled, announced Jessica. I'll use my medical training to work voluntarily at the children's hospital. And I gave up throwing more extravagant parties, added Madison. I want to organize events to raise money for needy schools. Jennifer surprised everyone. I sold the apartment I bought and made a profit of $200,000. I want to invest everything in microcredit for small entrepreneurs. It was evident the experience had profoundly transformed each of them. On the 7th day, they sought Dorothy to ask for help about how to use the second million. Dorothy, we want to do as you did. Can you guide us? Asked Ashley. Girls, you don't need to do exactly as I did. Each of you discovered an area that moves you. Use that. Dorothy helped them structure concrete plans. Ashley would create a fund for children's surgeries. Jessica would set up a community clinic in partnership with public hospitals. Madison would establish a program to improve public schools. Jennifer would develop a microcredit cooperative. But we want everything to be coordinated with your project, said Jessica, so the impact will be greater. And we want you to teach us how to make it work, added Jennifer. Dorothy smiled, seeing the genuine transformation in the girls she had helped raise. On the 8th day, the final meeting had a completely different atmosphere from the previous one. The 5 women entered the room with serene expressions and determined looks. Richard awaited them expectantly. So, how did you use the second million? One by one, they presented their projects. Ashley had created a fund that would pay for surgeries for 50 underprivileged children. Jessica had established a clinic that would serve 1,000 families per month free of charge. Madison would renovate 10 public schools and create a scholarship program. Jennifer would finance 100 small businesses in the outskirts. And most importantly, said Ashley, all the projects are integrated with Dorothy's program. We want to work together. Richard was moved, seeing the transformation of his daughters. You've discovered something that took me 50 years to learn, he said, with tears in his eyes. True success isn't measured by what we accumulate, but by what we transform in people's lives. Dorothy was also emotional. Mr. Richard, your daughters are wonderful people. They just needed to find the right path. And now? Asked Madison. What's the next step? Richard stood up and went to the safe once again. He took out documents that looked very formal. The next step is to formalize what you've already demonstrated in practice. He handed the papers to Dorothy to read first. Mrs. Dorothy, these are the documents transferring 50% of my entire estate to the social projects you've created together. You will be the president of the new family foundation. The shock was universal. Not even Dorothy had expected this. And the remainder, continued Richard, handing over other documents, will be divided equally among my daughters, but with one condition. They can only access the funds if they continue working on the social projects for the next 10 years. Dad, does that mean, began Jennifer. It means that this family's wealth will be used to create more social wealth. You'll have enough resources to live comfortably, but your true inheritance will be the legacy of transformation you'll leave for the world. Dorothy tried to refuse. Mr. Richard, this is too much. I can't accept such responsibility. Mrs. Dorothy, for 20 years you've taken care of this family better than I have myself. Now I want you to take care of hundreds of other families. I don't know anyone more prepared for this. The 4 daughters looked at each other and, in consensus, hugged Dorothy. We're going to work together, said Jessica, like a real family. A family united by the purpose of helping other families, completed Madison. Richard watched the scene with immense pride. The man who had built a business empire was seeing the birth of something even greater, an empire of solidarity and social transformation. There's one more thing, said Richard, taking out one last envelope. This contains the address of the church where Mrs. Dorothy and I met 25 years ago. I want it to be the first place where our foundation will operate. Dorothy opened the envelope with trembling hands. The address brought back deep memories. We're going to build a shelter for homeless people there, explained Richard. A place where no one has to sleep on the sidewalk, like the 2 of us once did. There will be dormitories, a dining hall, a library, a computer lab, and a professional training area, added Dorothy, who had participated in the planning. "And it will be called the Richard and Dorothy Hope Center," revealed Richard. Emotion overwhelmed everyone. That project represented the closing of a cycle that had begun 25 years earlier on a cold sidewalk. In the months that followed, the transformation of the Thompson family became a national example. The story of how a billionaire gave money to 5 women to spend and discovered that the humblest was also the wisest spread through the media. Ashley became an expert in coordinating partnerships with wealthy business people to fund children's surgeries. Her elegance and social connections, once used only for show, now served a noble cause. Jessica returned to studying medicine with a focus on public health. She opened a community clinic that became a model for other cities. Her personal experience with surgeries helped her better understand patients' needs. Madison discovered a calling for education. She created an innovative school reform method that improved both the physical infrastructure and the quality of teaching. Her organizational skills, once used only for parties, now transformed schools. Jennifer specialized in solidarity economics. Her microcredit cooperative financed over 1,000 small businesses in 2 years. Her financial knowledge finally found a social purpose. And Dorothy, the former cleaning lady, became one of the most respected figures in the American nonprofit sector. Her story inspired other business people to rethink how to use their wealth. The Hope Center was inaugurated exactly 1 year after the first $1 million challenge. Richard and Dorothy cut the ribbon together, at the very spot where they had shared a piece of bread decades earlier. "Mrs. Dorothy," said Richard during the ceremony, "when I was young and desperate, you taught me that there is always hope. Today, together, we are offering that same hope to others." "And I learned, Mr. Richard, that kindness planted always grows. Sometimes it takes time, but it always grows." The 4 daughters, now truly transformed, watched the scene, understanding that they had discovered something far more valuable than money. They had found their life's purpose. The Golden Mansion in Beverly Hills remained luxurious, but now it also housed a foundation that changed lives daily. The money that was once used only to buy objects now built hope. And Dorothy, who had begun the story as a simple cleaning lady, ended as the president of one of the country's largest social foundations, proving that true wealth had always been in her generous heart. 3 years later, when journalists asked Richard what had motivated him to conduct that unusual test, he always answered, "I wanted to discover which of my heirs deserved my fortune. I ended up discovering that the most deserving person had already been in my family for 20 years. I just needed to look beyond appearances." And when they asked Dorothy how she had felt upon receiving so much money, she smiled and answered, "Money is just a tool. What matters is how you use that tool. I chose to use it to multiply joy, and I ended up discovering that when you share joy, it always comes back multiplied." The foundation grew and expanded to other states. The model created by that family became a national benchmark for corporate social responsibility. The old frivolous purchases were forgotten. Ashley's jewels were sold to fund more surgeries. The luxury cars gave way to functional vehicles for social work. The mansion began to host charity meetings instead of frivolous parties. But the most important thing is that the 5 women discovered a form of wealth that cannot be stolen, lost, or devalued. The wealth of having transformed lives and knowing their existence made a difference in the world. Richard lived to see his foundation help over 10,000 families. When he passed away at 75, he left a legacy that went far beyond the numbers in his bank accounts. In his will, there was one last surprise, a letter addressed to Dorothy. "My dear friend Dorothy, when you shared your bread with me 30 years ago, you planted the seed of generosity that today has become a giant tree. Thank you for teaching me that true success isn't in what we accumulate, but in what we manage to give. Keep taking care of our family, the family you helped create, and the much larger family we built together to care for others." Dorothy, now a 65-year-old woman respected nationally, cried as she read the final words of the man who had changed her life. Richard's daughters, now mature women and professionally accomplished in social work, took on the responsibility of continuing their father's legacy. And so, the story that began with a billionaire giving money to 5 women to spend ended with the discovery that true wealth had always been in the heart of the one everyone considered just an employee. Dorothy never went back to working as a cleaner, but she never lost the humility and simplicity that characterized her. She continued living in the same simple house where she had always lived, wearing modest clothes and keeping her feet on the ground. The difference was that now her house received visits from politicians, business people, and public figures who came seeking advice on how to use resources to transform societies. And when children helped by the projects grew up and came to thank her, Dorothy always said the same thing. "Don't thank me. Thank your Richard, who had the courage to share what he had. And remember, when you grow up and have your own opportunities, don't forget to help those who come after you." End of story. Now tell me, do you believe Dorothy made the right decisions? How would you use $1 million if you had just 1 week to spend it? Share your opinion in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more heart-touching stories.